I have been doing this a very long time. And one of the things that frustrated me from the very beginning is very rarely are there actual tools to help you cross this divide between the theory of the thing and the application of the thing. And that's what we're talking about today. So we're really going to talk about what is the mechanism? What are the tools? What is the thing that we actually do, and how do we do it? To understand that, to go over that, we have to talk about a few basic ideas. And one of those basic ideas is selective attention. Selective attention is your mind's ability to parse through sensory data and focus on the aspect of the sensory data that you specifically want to pay attention to. So you can imagine that maybe you're in a very crowded area and somebody from across the room is maybe talking to you and you can't hear them, but you can read their lips. Now, in order to do that, you have to select out of all of the stimuli that's going on in that room, out of all of the different things that there is to compete with, you have to select with your attention what specifically you are going to pay attention to. In this case, you're trying to look across the room and you're trying to read a person's lips because you can't hear them. It takes a certain type of focus. So selective attention is the mind's ability to ignore some things and specifically focus on other things. And the longer you have maintained attention on what you have selected, we begin to call that focus. So you have attention, and then you have selective attention, because attention, unless it's being deliberately and intentionally placed, as we've talked about, tends to kind of bounce around. It tends to be an apparatus that is going to default to the highest probability. So it's whatever is pulling at your attention the most in that moment, or whichever is pulling on your emotional strings or your thought strings or your mind strings. Or remember, we talked in previous videos about how the world is attempting to commodify and capture your attention. So that's the competing noise that is in the background. So the very first step to doing the practice, and this is the four directions practice that is the mechanism, it's how we cross the divide between theory and application, is learning to select your attention. So that's something that you can do. So as soon as this video is over, or actually even right now, as you listen to me, you have selected to listen to this video, to listen to these words. It has been a chosen thing. And the longer that you're able to sustain that selective attention, we start to call that sustained focus. The focus of attention is how long you can hold and sustain what you have selected to place your mind on. So if you're listening to this video and then all of a sudden people start asking you questions and things in your environment start to move quicker, it's going to start to compete for your attention. So the basis of this practice is learning to select aspects of our sensory environment in advance so that we can maintain attention that is deliberate, intentional, and selective. So rather than a water hose that nobody's holding and it has a lot of high pressure water velocity coming out of the hose and it's just flapping all over the place, selective attention is taking hold of that hose and pointing it a particular direction. And that's what we're talking about here. So this is the action item. This is the thing that we do. This is the practice, is learning throughout the day to place our attention in a certain direction. And so the first direction that we can pay attention to, and in my book, I'm going to put it close to my face so that you can see it. In my book, Igong, The Deliberate Practice, I get into the neuroscience. I get into why does this work so well? And one of the reasons is because each of these four directions is using a different part of the brain. And because it's using different parts of the brain, it doesn't cross streams. What do I mean by crossing streams? You cannot think two independent thought streams at the same time. You can try, like right now, you can try to think two different things at the same time, two different streams of words, two different images, the past and the future, all at the same time. You can't do it. The brain cannot think two simultaneous thought patterns, word patterns at the same time because it's using the same centers of the brain. So Broca's area and Wernicke's area are the areas that are responsible for processing and receiving verbal language. But even when you're not verbalizing it, those two areas are still involved when you're internalizing the words into an internal monologue. So the reason that this works so well is because each direction is operating in a different part of your brain. So you can actually start to engage these directions at the same time. And that's how it works. And there is a metabolic cost, but the metabolic cost to be present and to engage your attention is much less than a water hose that nobody is holding because you're just literally just shooting energy out all over the place. Your metabolic energy, your attention energy, and ultimately that spirit energy is just being thrown about because attention isn't being selected intentionally. So the four different directions that we can place our attention. We have introspection. And introspection is being able to pay attention to your own body. So while you listen to me right now, you can put your hand in front of your face and move your fingers, and you can feel that. You can feel that you are a person in space and time, right? So you have sensory perception, proprioception, so that you can feel your body as it exists in space and time. And eventually you can start to pinpoint certain areas on your body. Eventually you can feel the movement of energy as it moves through your body. And in Qigong tradition and Tai Chi tradition, this is called Qi. This is what we're paying attention to as it moves through us. So that is a direction of your attention, is paying attention to your own body. Do you feel your feet on the ground? Do you feel your hands as you move them? Are you aware of your physicality? So being aware of your body and your physicality is what I call the internal direction of attention. Okay, so that's one direction that we have so far. Now we have the external direction because we have internal. Logically, we're going to have external. And this is all of your external sensory perception. These are the things that you see. These are the things that you hear. These are the things that you smell and taste and touch. And one of the things that you learn is that eventually these directions start to cross streams. They start to connect. And before you know it, when we touch something, like we touch a cup, this is both internal and external. The cup is outside of me, so it's a form of external perception, but I'm aware of it in my hand, which is a form of internal perception. So we are selecting points of attention where we're going to place our attention within these directions. It's a very simple concept. It's not always easy to do. It's definitely not easy to maintain, but conceptually, this bridge to cross the divide between theory and application is accessible. It's right there for us. All we have to do is do it. So we have internal attention, which is my body, my physicality. We have external attention, which is the sounds, the visual cues, what I'm seeing with my eyes, what I'm hearing with my ears, what I'm touching with my hands. If somebody's cooking something, then what I smell, and then when I eat something, what I taste. These are our sensory perception that we're bringing in from the world. And the key is to be selective. And then, of course, the way to make sure that it's selective is to select it in advance. So when I'm going throughout the day, maybe I'm walking to work, I'm paying attention to my feet. Is my big toe rolling and pushing off the ground as a human being should properly walk? I don't know if I don't pay attention to it. So I pay attention to that. That's an aspect that I have chosen to place my attention on. my physical alignment as I walk. Is my structure in alignment? Is my neck in alignment? Is my physical chest in alignment to my neck and the rest of my body? I don't know if I'm not paying attention to it. So I select this attention in advance directionally, and I call that the internal direction. Well, while I'm walking, I'm also listening. I'm also paying attention to the environment. It's spring, so there's a lot of birds outside. I can select as I walk from the apartment to the train, I'm going to pay attention to the birds. I'm going to really listen to them. That's going to be the attention that I choose to select in the external direction. So we have an internal direction so far, and we have an external direction so far, and we are utilizing selective attention. This is the practice of Qigong. This is the practice of learning to focus your mind as an entity of free will and a being that can affect the probability of behavior. So we have two directions, internal and external. Breath is another direction of attention, and it's not overlapping with the other two. It's not necessarily an external form of perception, and it's not necessarily an internal form of perception because it's kind of a bridge between the two. So when I'm paying attention to my breath and I'm breathing in a particular way as I walk to the train, as I get on the train, maybe, the trains don't always smell the greatest. So sometimes being very deliberate with my exhales and fully exhaling is very important on the train. Well, if I select my attention to be on my breath, I am doing this practice. I have selected my attention in advance to be in the direction of breath. But then I place my attention on my just below my rib cage where my diaphragm is. Well, now I'm paying attention to my body while I breathe. That's two directions of attention. And simultaneously, maybe I'm looking at the sky and I'm breathing into my environment, which may sound weird, but that's something that we can do. We can breathe into a space, and now I'm using external, internal, and breath all at the same time. It is selective, it is on purpose, it is deliberate, and I have pointed my attention in that direction in advance. Now, the fourth direction of attention is already engaged in a manner of speaking, because if you're aware of how you're walking, if you're aware of your body's physicality in space-time, if you're aware of the external stimuli that's happening around you, if you're aware of your breath, well, the awareness of yourself is the fourth direction that we call cognition. And that can include imagination. Imagination is a form of cognition, which could include imaginary scenarios, future or past. You can do this on purpose just as easily as you can do it not on purpose, on just random. The mind is a field of probability, and it's just going to the place that it's most probabilistically going to go to, right? Somebody cuts you off in traffic, your mind, based on probability, is going to get upset. It's going to take offense. Or if you've had a lot of training, like maybe in Qigong practice, somebody cuts you off in traffic, and because you're so present, you're able to interrupt the probability factor that would contribute to you getting upset in your behavior, because behavior is a matter of probability, not single one-to-one cause and effect choice. So at any moment, I can change the probability of where my mind is by doing this practice and by being aware of myself. You can't do this practice without self-awareness. It's impossible. Because how do you adjust your breath? Well, you're aware of yourself. You're aware of your breathing. How do you pay attention to your body? Well, you're aware of your body in space and time. So that's awareness of yourself. If you're aware of specifically what sensory information you're choosing to focus on, maybe you're listening to somebody and they're saying something important and you really want to focus on their words. Well, when you're focusing on their words, you are selecting the external direction of attention, and you're doing so in a way that is selective, it's intended in advance, and it's going in a particular direction. And that is this practice. That's what we're doing. The more selective we are, the more intentional we are, the more our focus begins to be an important factor in the probability of behavior and in the probability of our entire lives. How easily do we get offended? How easily do we get angry? How easily do we get bored? All of these things can be affected by doing this practice. And this practice is selective attention in a particular direction. And we're going to go into great depth about these directions and about how to select your attention and how to set yourself up so that this practice is more manageable and it's more easy and it can be done all throughout the day in every single thing that you do. Every single thing that you do can be infused with selective, deliberate, intentional awareness. And in the next video, we're going to talk about the bulk of this practice. So we talked about what it is, how we do it. Now we're going to talk about what the practice actually looks like.